The following podcast may contain discussions supported by science that may be considered dangerous to some listeners and conspiracy theorists. Discretion is advised.
The Three Down Greencast is brought to you by Lucky Bastard Distillers, Saskatchewan's premier distillery, and by the Pile of Bones Brewing Company, brewed in the heart of Regina. Welcome to the Three Down Greencast. You are listening to the internet's only Ask John Anything Coming Soon podcast. I'm Joel Gasson with John Fraser as usual, and we have plenty to get to as the Riders move to 3-0 with a very convincing win over the Hamilton Ticats. Perhaps, easily their most convincing win of the year, but perhaps their most convincing win in quite some time.
Yes.
And so plenty to get to about that game. We will talk a little bit about that game, the attendance at that game, the situation with Trevor Harris, and whether the CFL should be playing a game on Canada Day or not, as of course the long weekend is on the horizon. So that will be a discussion point to be had as well. Before we get to all that, though, because I'm currently not working my day job, I spend a lot of time online now.
That's fair. Your volume of memes you are sending is quite high, especially there are days, although I'm not often busy at my real job, there are days I'll pick up my phone and it's like, Joel has sent you 4+ messages on Instagram, and I'm like, oh yeah, you're still on paternal leave, you lucky son of a...
Yeah. Anyway, so I came across an article. I believe it's called on a website called Vine and Pear. They asked a bunch of beer experts, like actual beer experts, what their sort of Mount Rushmore of IPAs were.
Mm-hmm.
And it just got me thinking, because I knew we were going to record this evening as we do this.
Yes.
As has been sort of the key a thing lately, is I wasn't really sure what we were going to open with.
Yes.
And then this came across, and I was like, you know what? There is nothing more than cliche sports talk radio loves more than a Mount Rushmore discussion.
So that means we're obviously going to talk about the Mount Rushmore of Rider wins this year, clearly, right?
Well, there's only 3 of them so far, unless you want to include the preseason wins, I guess.
There we go. Let's do that. That's a nice, easy Mount Rushmore there for the listeners.
You have to leave one of the games out, so which one do you leave out? No, just kidding. We're not talking about that, no. But we are doing, I guess, a Mount Rushmore with some honorable mentions, because it is us of, I guess you would say, the best IPAs you've ever consumed.
Yes, and that is...
I'm not going to sit here and say that the IPAs that we've drank are obviously among the best in the world, among the best ever made in history. No, we don't know that. There's lots of great stuff made everywhere, and there can always be something that's better. I know there's a lot of industry sort of standards that are held up, and that's something that often makes Mount Rushmore over possibly being good. Now it's like, well, you were this one was the one that set the entire trend, so maybe it belongs, sort of thing, right? So I understand
certainly.
that.
Which is part of what I've done actually with my Mount Rushmore. As you told me, yours is on social media, so I have managed to stay off of social media the last 3 or 4 hours, so I didn't accidentally spoil it for myself. So this is raw, unfiltered, uncensored podcasting about the Mount Rushmore of IPAs.
Yes, absolutely. So for me, my 4 that I've chosen. In no particular order. Mount Rushmore isn't necessarily about actually ranking the 4. You just pick 4 that you would put on the wall, basically, right?
Basically, yep.
For me, I have the Pile of Bones Space Cadet.
Okay.
Because I think to me it is sort of the classic style. It just hits every button that I want a good IPA to hit.
Yep.
For me, number 2 would be the Rebellion Double Hazy.
Okay,
I don't think they've made that recently, but it's an absolute banger that I love.
Yep.
In terms of double IPAs, it's probably my favorite. An honorable mention to that would probably have to go to Blackbridge's double IPA. But that number 3, I don't know if you ever had this one. It's my favorite Ottawa beer. It's the Dominion City Sunsplit.
I have not actually tried it.
It's more widely available now than it was. It's not in Saskatchewan anywhere. But if you're ever back in Northern Ontario, you may be able to find it now. I'm not sure.
I'll have to take a look. Actually, the craft
it's a real juice bomb.
Getting real good. So
yeah, it's a real juice bomb. I really enjoy it.
Yes.
And this one, I'm fairly certain, 99.9999% sure is going to be on yours. That's the Blackbridge Uno IPA.
You knew that I was going to have one of those. You are absolutely correct. So
I thought maybe Space Cadet would also end up on there, but we'll see.
I was between Space Cadet almost made mine, but then I alluded to, I had to go back to the first one that really got me into IPAs. So obviously going to start with the Uno IPA. That's not the first one, but it's on both of our Mount Rushmores. It is just whenever they make it, you got to get it. It's so damn good there from Blackbridge. For the long term, the first time I tried it, the Fat Tug IPA from Driftwood.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Like, that's really one of the first, like, hoppy, flavorful ones I really got into, and then I learned that it has a different kind of drunk. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just your own mind. I don't know if it's because, like, more often than not, I'm drinking it while on holidays out in Victoria, but it's like, it's a different vibe. Up next is the 88 Wave Pool IPA, which is one I have absolutely beamed about on this very here podcast. Yep. So same thing, like, I like, you know, I think the Uno fills the role of the traditional IPA, but in terms of hoppy juice bombs, definitely Wave Pool. It is like, if I walk into a liquor store, like, the only downside here is walking into a liquor store here, it's typically like as much as $10 more for 4, and sometimes you got to go, okay, I'm gonna go with my 1B, which is just as good and $10 cheaper. That being, no surprise, the Pile of Bones White IPA. But it's like, this one's like President's Head. It would be half of a like white IPA can and half of a double white IPA can, because I honestly think the Pile of Bones, the double white, is the best IPA you can find, but at 8%, it's not just like, that is one you have to make sure the chores are done. You're not making the last second run to the hardware store when you start getting into those. My honorable mention, also an Ontario beer, the Nautical Disaster by Lake of the Woods. A very, again, traditional dry hopped IPA, not a juice bomb, but it's just one of those that, hey, I want an IPA, I want a Nautical Disaster. Earns a couple extra points in my book for the hip reference, of course, but it stands on its own, even sans tragically hip reference of the kind of beer it is.
I think for me, an honorable mention, of course, would have to be the Nokomis India Pale Ale.
Oh, yes, yeah.
That's fair. I didn't really know where to put that, but also, because like there isn't really like a specific one they make, though it could be Sports now, because Sports is now a NEPA.
Yes.
Pretty much any New England IPA from Multinational is going to bang. I can pretty much guarantee you that.
Yeah, anything that Multi does and is absolutely right.
Right now they put out one for their 700th brew.
Yeah.
That's like double NEPA. It's like 7%, so it's not super strong in terms of doubles, but I was there, I was buying one. And their delivery guy, Carl, was also there, and he's like, you should get a second one. I was like, yeah? He's like, yeah. I was like, okay, so I got a second one. I was like, yeah. And I'm heading there tomorrow to meet someone, and I was like, I'm hoping there's still some there. It's not good. It's not good.
You know it's good when it is exactly that kind of recommendation. The other, I guess, too, like, thinking of it, like, obviously the Hazy from Rebellion. I like the Zilla from Rebellion.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Same thing. When I'm in a, like, I feel like my tastes are very skewed right now because it is summertime, and especially when we get to what's in the glass, you'll very much see that. But it is like just the I want an IPA. Zilla is up there. And again, for me too, it's like readily available here in Saskatchewan. It gets a little extra nod. You can always get a Zilla. You can always get a POB White. You know, sometimes Uno isn't around. So, but it's just, it's that good of an IPA that it has to make the list. Like, it absolutely has to make the list. Like, if you are looking to, if you've been slowly dipping your toes and slowly moving away from commercial beer and slowly wanting to try something different, start with the Uno. Start with the Uno. Start with the Fat Tug. Like, those are two staples, and go from there.
I think the White IPA is a really good entry as well.
Oh, no. And that actually, you know what? I was out golfing last Thursday with our Toyota rep and a couple of our couple other staff members from Ends, and I just showed up at the bar first, ordered 2 white IPAs. I'm like, well, one's for me. Somebody's either going to want the second one or I'm going to drink the second one, and all will be well. And a guy that had been drinking Coors Light on the course the entire day went, oh my God, that's good. What is that? So, like, I also couldn't imagine going from, like, lukewarm, kind of shaken up golf cart Coors Light to a fresh out of a tap white IPA out at Prairie Sun. So, yeah, it was like Remember the Simpsons episode where Homer first tastes the ribwitch and you see all the like little like barbecue sauce going into his veins and his eyes like bulge out? That's what I feel like my buddy Jim went through that evening.
Fair enough. If you have other questions that you would like direct towards John about beer,
or about
you have
anything.
An opportunity coming up about anything in general, quite frankly.
Yes.
As is tradition, the Riders' first bye week of the season is coming up. That'll be next week, which means it's the return of Ask John Anything. And we mean anything. Nothing is off limits. We will get to as many questions as we can. Of course, technically, there is no time limit on this show, so the more questions, the better. The less work that I have to do to come up with stuff to talk about during a bye week, the better. So...
I will make sure the liquor cabinet is stocked and I am buzzed and ready to go for Ask John Anything next week.
So Dave, Jock, all of you, you know the drill here. And anyone else who has any other questions they'd like to ask, send them to me on Twitter, Facebook, wherever you find me, wherever you know where to reach out to me, or send them to John too. I suppose he can forward them along as well. We will, of course, send out the call on social media as well to be like, hey, get your questions in because it's coming next week. Don't know what day yet. We'll figure it out eventually, as we normally do with this show. And then the hilarity will begin. Unlike last time we did this was, of course, at Christmas, so we did kind of a themed episode. There's no theme this time around. Just fire away. Ask anything you want, whether it's about lacrosse, about beer, about... I don't know, gardening, whatever weird stuff John might be into, who knows?
Gardening, not my strong suit, but I'll find
breaking
a ways.
Lawnmowers, yeah.
Oh, no, I've got advice on how to fix a lawnmower now. Definitely learn that. And today, finished setting up my above-ground pool, the 4-foot-tall kiddie pool, which is great because, like, as a grown-ass man, I can just, like, sit there, and it just, like, reaches arm level, and it's great for the summer days.
So, yeah. Send your questions in, sooner the better, then I can bookmark them and we can get ready. So yeah, that'll be coming next week. Until then, we got plenty to talk about as the Riders are 3-0 after a big win over the Hamilton Ticats, but as usual for the Pile of Bones Brewing Company, John, because we haven't had enough beer talk this week, what is in the glass this week?
Well, because we've talked so much beer, I went a different direction than beer. I went and I forgot how good these were. Got myself some Stooners. The Lucky Bastard Saskatoon Berry Iced Tea. Had a couple of the Berries beers at my first off, as an aside, I know we didn't plan on talking about this. First Saskatoon Berries game last week. Unbelievable experience.
Nice.
Take the kids. Maya was maybe a little too young, but Max and Connor loved it. Kids get to run the bases after the game, autographs, all that stuff. There was a standing room area that when the kids started getting antsy from, sitting, they can just run and be wild, and it's amazing. It's right by the bullpen, so you see the guys warm up. But yeah, Saskatoon Berries, great job. Had a couple of the 9 Mile Saskatoon Berry beers there, and then on my way home, stopped and picked up, to keep with the Saskatoon Berry theme, and the summer theme, the Lucky Bastard Saskatoon Berry Iced Teas, and oh my goodness, are they good.
They are. And no sugar, so even better.
No, exactly. So you can almost feel guilt-free while you work on your Sunday afternoon. I've started putting the pool up, but it might not get finished, Buzz.
Absolutely. For me, after we had a little gathering over the weekend for Cadence's first birthday, as it was also technically Jenny and Maya's birthday celebration as well, because we're all kind of like a week and a bit apart.
Yeah, you timed that well.
Yeah. So for me, I was gifted a 4-pack of Hazy IPA from Rebellion Brewing. So I'm having one of those right now. It's hazy, juicy, fruity, delicious, just as the can says.
Yes, and always so good.
It is a solid beer. It's very crushable. Like it's a little juicy, but still a little dry as well, which I kind of like. Like I like the complete juice bomb sometimes, but I like a little bit of that sort of dry note to it as well.
Yeah, you want to eat. It comes down. You want to taste the booze a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good in that, like, the Rebellion Hazy, that's a summer beer to me. Like, that just screams summer beer, much like the Saskatoon Berry Iced Tea screams summer vodka goodness.
Vodka in sort of its natural state is just a summer drink, basically, isn't it?
I mean, I also, while we were doing our preamble, I crushed, Lacey still had, like, this healthy, like, passion fruit juice that I put a bunch of vodka in it and sipped on that, and that was really good, and I think it gave me my vitamin C because I'm not sure if I have allergies or a cold, but either way, that was delightful.
Mm-hmm. It was also delightful for Rider fans over the weekend as they took on the Hamilton Ticats, and it's safe to say the 36-20 score I think was a little flattering to Hamilton.
Yes.
Other than like a brief moment in the second quarter from kind of the midway point of the second quarter to halftime, it never really felt like Hamilton was going to get much going because the game started out like right away. There's the fumble off the opening kickoff. They score a touchdown a couple plays later, and you're like, okay, this is the kind of start you need if you're going to have the kind of game that they should have against this team to, sort of successfully distance themselves from sort of the bottom of the pack of this league.
Yep. It
and
was
then
great
they
to see them not play down to somebody.
Yeah, and then they scored again to go up 4-0, and you're like, okay. And, the jokes are going around the press box, mostly led by me. It's like, okay, well, 2 more touchdowns and a big storm and we're out of here. Because it could have been over the 21 points before the third quarter. It's like, okay, see ya. This delay's too long. But it didn't quite get to that point because then there was that sort of second quarter lull a little bit because I know from what I understand from the broadcast, it took a while for Glenn Suter to realize that the wind was an issue in that stadium, especially in the first half.
Goodness, yes.
I picked up on it right away because Brett Lowther's opening kickoff went to the 1-yard line.
Yes.
Which, unless he's trying for a rouge, does not happen very often.
No. And you could actually see, and this is the thing with Glenn Suter, who was, as somebody that, you were at the game, I watched it.
Yeah.
And I don't like ever calling out fellow color commentators. I can tell you firsthand how damn hard that job is. Mm-hmm. He was real bad that game. Yeah. Like, it was like he was watching something else. I don't know if, like, his phone was getting blown up by friends and family or something, but, man, he was off on that one. I mean, you could see the pants flapping in the wind
I felt
of the officials.
As soon as I got out of the car and started walking towards the stadium, I'm like, there's a bit of a northerly breeze here. I don't know what it's like because I'm like, okay, the stadium's so a little underground, so maybe like the playing surface a little underground, maybe that'll make a bit of a difference. But that's still the way it's blowing in through the scoreboard side, which is far more open than if it was blowing south.
Right.
Through the stands, basically.
And you could just tell, like watching on TV, you're seeing pants flap and stuff like that, and it's not like the referees are wearing, JUCO jeans here. They're wearing like some pretty tight pants, especially I think Mike Siona's working that game, and my boy Mike, that man's got like Canada's ass, and he was wearing tight pants, and you could still see flappida in the wind. Not that I was looking at my buddy Mike's ass in high def, but I was looking at my buddy's Mike's ass in high def. But you could definitely tell wind was going to be a factor in this one.
Mm-hmm. And so I think that played into sort of the fast start. They obviously took advantage of that, and then things kind of slowed down when they went the other way because in the first half, all the points were scored heading north.
Yeah, which makes sense.
So that was a thing, and then and because of that, I think that's that kind of changed my view on the game in the second half a little bit because when they were up, whatever it was, like 17-0 or whatever it was at the point, I think 18-0 with the rouge off the punt.
There was a 25-0. It was 25-7 after 3.
Yeah, but in the partway through the second quarter, it was like 18-0. And I'm like, okay. And you could kind of just feel like the Rider offense had bogged down a bit again.
Yeah.
And this was before Trevor Harris got hurt, obviously. And it was like, okay. And I turned on, I said to Daryl Davis, I'm like, they're going to score here, and this is going to suddenly become a game. He just kind of laughed. He said, you think Hamilton's going to score? And then sure enough, 3 plays later, they were in the end zone. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, you were right. I'm like, I've seen this script 1,000 times before. You kind of hang around. You let a team, at 18-0, you're not out of it, but it's not quite a game either. Like, it's sort of a weird zone where whatever happens next is going to determine whether this remains a football game or not. And they kind of let off the mat a little bit, but then what it was impressive was they came out from halftime, and rather than letting that thing continue to spiral from all that, even without Trevor Harris, they just completely controlled the game in the entire second half, and there was never a moment from there on end where I thought the Riders were going to lose.
No, it was certainly. And you and I were texting about how the defense in the third quarter came out and made the big plays that they absolutely had to make. You see Trevor Harris.
They're like, okay, Harris is down. Let's go do this.
Yeah.
Because there was that one drive where Hamilton was marching, and it was with the wind because Corey Mace smartly decided to kick off both halves so he can have the wind in the fourth quarter.
Yes.
Which is another sign that the wind is obviously a situation if the coach believes it's a situation.
Yes.
And They were, where's Hamilton, about the 20 or so, I believe, when they finally got the fumble and recovered, and they went back the other way. I don't think they scored, but they moved it enough downfield, that drive, to bury Hamilton again and basically lead to nothing.
Well, and to be able to drive with your backup quarterback was huge, especially, when your guy's in the room and everybody's worried about that. But coming out, and I think it was the pick six in the third quarter that was the play to me that I'm like, okay,
CJ Avery again, basically. He wasn't the pick six, but he deflected it, and yes. I believe it was on the CKRM postgame show. He was talking with Duncan the boys, like in practice when they're sort of in that spot. He said he knew that Jameer Thurman was going to be nearby. So he's like, I'm just going to deflect this and hope he catches it.
Unreal.
Sure enough.
Unreal. Like the awareness there, like that's crazy. Like to just know that your other guy is in that area based on the play call. Like that's high level football IQ. And that's a guy you definitely want in your squad. Like, wow, that is, I don't think I've ever heard of a player say that. Normally when it gets deflected, it's, I kind of knew a guy was there. I knew he was there. So I just popped it up. Right. So he does it again. They come up with a pick six, which could be, I don't want to say season defining, but to me, we already have all the proof through, I know he made some mistakes maybe in game 2, but to me, I think we can go out. It's not even going out on a limb anymore. I think we can factually say that Corey Mace is a better coach than Craig Dickinson ever was. I know it's crazy to say that three games in, but you look at the decisions that he made. Like you mentioned, taking the ball in the fourth quarter. That's something that Craig may not necessarily have done. And really, the genius level play after you go up 28-7, going, I don't care how bad you want back in, Trevor. You're sitting.
Yes. Yeah, it was 18-7. So obviously we all saw just before the half, it was a couple minutes before Trevor Harris goes down, apparent knee injury, close enough to halftime that he's essentially just going to go right to the room. So it's hard to say really at that point how bad it is. They come back out. At that time, we're all watching to see who's coming out at halftime. By the time it's obvious that this game is going to start, Trevor Harris nowhere to be seen. He does eventually come out and starts throwing on the sidelines.
Yes, which is a great sign.
A great sign going forward for this team that he should hopefully be okay unless this thing seized up real bad in the next day or two afterwards. We don't know because they're on bye week, so there's no media until they practice again on Sunday. Next Sunday, that is. So it's another whole other situation where we don't entirely know, but at that time, it certainly looks like a positive sign for the rest of the season. What was a more positive sign, in my opinion, was because he looked okay on the sidelines and was trying to campaign to Corey Mace to get back into this game, was the fact that he did not get back into this game.
Yes.
It would have been very easy, and I don't think necessarily anyone would blame a coach for putting a quarterback of that caliber back in any football game. Even if it scored 18-7, stayed 18-7 well into the fourth quarter, I'm pretty convinced we would not have seen Trevor Harris again, because Corey Mace said the words that I wanted to hear, which was, "Why risk it?"
Yes.
He said it right in the post-game press conference. He didn't just say, we weren't sure if he was good to go or anything. It's like, it sounded like he felt fairly confident that Trevor Harris is probably okay, but why risk it?
Yes.
And it is so good to hear that, because it's not about winning week 3. It's not about winning week 10. It's about winning in November, and there was absolutely no reason whatsoever, even without a bye week coming up, for Trevor Harris to return to that football game. So kudos to Corey Mace for saying, no, you're done for the day. Sorry, we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Well, and that to me is the biggest difference between Mace and Dickinson. I think, and again, do I have any evidence to back this up?
And a lot of good coaches would have put Trevor Harris back into that game.
Especially your veteran star quarterback who is, on top of the league and a lot of noticeable stats right now, says, I want back in. It takes some real backbone, especially for a rookie head coach, to go, no, we need you later in the season. Stay loose. Like, I like the fact that Harris was still, looked like he was staying loose. He was jogging. He was, because
if something happened to Shea Patterson, I'm sure he may have ended up back in the game.
Or if Hamilton, all of a sudden there's a pick six and a pick six on like consecutive plays, Trevor Harris probably comes back in that one, right? So it was good to see that he wasn't so wounded that he was able to do that. But Corey Mace stuck to his guns, was able to tell them stay on the sidelines. We're going to be good. And that, to me, is a great sign of a great head coach, too. AJ Ouellette, although as much as we've made jokes and comments, don't pay for American running backs, but he looked much better. I thought the offense, like, I texted you this, too, early in the game. This team is fun. Like, there's just, like, you look at the number of guys they're getting involved. Like, you don't, it's not a Winnipeg situation where Zach Collaros basically makes eye contact with Dalton Show and they send each other their hearts in the eyes, through the field, and then he throws on the ball. Like, you don't know who's getting the ball. I mean, AJ Ouellette was the leading receiver with 47 yards, and yet everybody else was involved. Like, it was just like, it was good offense that you like to see. It was well coached, guys executed, and Joe Ojo already making the case for being one of the best 7th round picks ever in this league.
No, and you just don't see guys from that point to make this big of an impact. Like, or maybe there's special teamers at best sometimes.
Right.
The thing with him is there was never any question about his abilities. It was just between the ears.
Right.
And he had a hot start at Clemson. Things were looking good, and then he kind of went off the rails as 20-year-old men do sometimes.
Yes, 100%.
Like, he was young and immature and probably did some stupid shit. And, maybe the experience from that and the experience of then being completely ignored by the NFL and being a 7th round pick in the CFL, as much as there's nothing wrong with that, to someone like him with that headspace, there probably is something wrong with that.
Oh, 100%.
Maybe humbled him a little bit and gets him to the point where he is today, where he could become a very good receiver for this team, no question.
Or even playing for a college that you and I, a couple of sickos, have never even heard for before he got drafted in the 7th round, right? Like, this is a kid that was a true freshman starter at Clemson. Like, the talent is there, so it's good to see. And we saw it a bit in camp, too. We saw it in camp where, he was making things noticeable. He played that one great preseason game. I'm glad they gave him a real number. I'm glad he's. I mean, that's even the thing. He didn't even have a real number in training camp. He had 75 as a receiver. That it might as well be. Yeah, that's what's going to be framed in your office when you're selling cars one day, so you can tell about the one time you got a touchdown pass in a preseason game for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, right? So it's great to see they got him a real number.
Yeah, and it's been a very balanced offense. They found different ways to win. They found different ways to sort of work the offense. Like, this week was a lot more small ball, a lot more AJ Ouellette, that sort of thing. Part of it was partially because obviously Trevor Harris went out. I think also the wind going the one way played into that. So it's good to see a coaching staff sort of adapt to the surroundings around them rather than saying this is how we're going to do it no matter what.
Well, and adapt to what Hamilton presented them last game, right? We talk about, and in any sport, it is so hard to beat a team back-to-back. Right, especially in football where you've got a full week. They had a full week to make adjustments, to figure things out. They found out, okay, how do they take Ouellette away from us? And they figured it out, and they adapted, and they made it work. And I think one thing I really like about Mark Mueller so far is there was a point in the game where Stearns hadn't gotten a touch for a bit, and they just got him involved on a quick little like fake jet little pass, like, just to get the guys touches, right? Like,
I think they probably just got Stearns sewed back together after that hit he took last week.
That's fair, right? But I like when you can do that with your offense because A, it keeps the defense guessing. B, it shows you have depth. And C, guys want to touch the ball. You're like, if you have a guy sitting there playing wide out for the whole game and he doesn't see any action, any targets for the entire first half. Hello, Drew Wolodarski in Winnipeg. That's actually a pretty good receiver. You don't give him the ball, that guy's not going to be engaged, right? So I like the way they spread it out. I liked what they did, and I think really, like. And you said it in Good, the Bad, and the Dumb. And actually, while you were introducing the Mount Rushmore thing, I texted you at one point saying it was the most impressive win since 2019. I went back a couple seasons.
Yep.
I think the last time the Riders had a win that I'm like, oh, yeah, they got this in the bag. They beat Montreal 41-20 on July long weekend in 2022. And outside of that, I don't think there's been a game that you just looked at it and went, oh, yeah, like this, they got this in the bag from basically the second half on.
No, there's been even that game to open the season 2 years ago, like 3 years ago, but before Nathan Rourke became the starter. in BC, and they were up like 38-0 in the first half and almost blew it.
Yes. 33-29.
If that game was 5 minutes longer, they would have lost.
Certainly.
The way that was going. So.
Yeah, and even that one had nail biting, right? Like you look back, and for this team over many years, like hell, almost as long as we've been doing this podcast, there haven't been a lot that we come on here, crack the mics, and go, yeah, so they had that in the bag. That was, I mean, let's face it, it's the basis of the good, the bad, the dumb. You always have something good, something bad, and often something dumb, but
that is my one gripe about this start of this season so far, is they haven't been as ridiculous and chaotic enough. I need something stupid to start happening in these games.
I know. Otherwise, it makes the good, the bad, and the dumb really, really hard. Like, when I saw you writing about game
I know the coaching staff doesn't want to see it. I know they would rather it be, like, boring win, but come on. We need some content here, boys. Something has to happen.
I thought for sure your dumb would have been what happened to that football off the right foot of Brett Lowther. I thought maybe, because that was just like the most bananas land. Like, that ball just hit a gust of wind. It just went completely to the right.
That was a questionable field goal decision to begin with into that wind.
Right.
I thought. So.
Exactly. So it almost could have been in the bad, but there wasn't a lot of bad. Maybe.
No, the bad was like, it is sort of the lingering question over Trevor Harris until he actually plays again.
And maybe the play, and maybe Shea Patterson a bit.
Maybe. I mean, I'm willing to give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because he came in cold, and I'm like, there are guys like Mason Fine is one of those guys who comes off the bench and plays better than he starts for whatever reason.
Yes.
Maybe Shea Patterson looks like that guy who looks better when he actually has time to prepare for the week and play.
Yes.
Because obviously during the preseason, he gets some snaps and he gets ready to play.
Yes.
I don't know how much they really give him during the regular season, especially with the ones to come in and play, especially like right before the end of the half. If he came in, if that happened like right at the end of the half, and he was starting right from the start of the second half fresh, maybe he sort of gets halftime a little bit to at least get his mind into it, and maybe that makes a difference. I don't know, but yeah, he didn't look that comfortable in the pocket. I'd like to see him sit in there a little bit longer because, especially on a week where he's not starting, the offense is built around what Trevor Harris is going to do. Sorry, Trevor Harris hasn't basically moved all year. The guy is 0 for 0 with 0 yards rushing, so he's not exactly running around all over the place.
No.
So maybe, I'm not saying don't run around because we know that's what you can do. Don't ever roll out, but maybe give the pocket a second or two before bailing.
Oh yeah, and that was even something the TV broadcast picked up, and it was like Patterson would get the ball, and it was like, okay, I need, oh God, there's pressure, right? Like a lot of young guys in that moment. Like you said, you're coming in cold. It's a tough spot to come in, and the way that Trevor Harris was fighting to get back, it almost seemed like, you know, he probably was sitting on the bench right up until he went back into the third quarter thinking, well, I bet you Trevor's going to go back in. And all of a sudden, oh, what do you mean Trevor's not going back? What do you mean I'm the guy? I got to be the guy. And he looked frantic. But what I did like about seeing him compared to Mason Fine was already just, you can tell there's a bit more athleticism there. He does need to calm down. He gets the happy feet a little too early, but he was able to make plays happen rather than just, you know, find a guy and throw the ball his way. So he was maybe a little scrambly, and as much as we like the guy and as much as we think he is definitely better than Mason Fine, ideally,
I mean, he's still a rough around the edges backup quarterback. Like he's far from a sure thing. He was just better than Mason Fine.
Oh, 100%.
That is the bar that he beat. I don't think anyone else really proclaimed him to be much more than that. So
no, and I always go by, you know, if the Riders cut, just like when, I mean, Mason Fine's probably selling insurance someplace now, but like when the Riders cut, if the Riders were to cut Shea Patterson, would another team take a look? And I think yes. Like I think the talent's there, the athleticism is there for sure. He just brings something different to the team, and with that running ability, though, like he is quick. I would love to. And maybe they have this, maybe Mueller, because again, the Riders don't have to bring out all of their big guns and gadget plays and stuff like that.
They're not throwing to Chris Streveler in the third game of the week.
No, exactly. Yeah, they're not going Streveler heavy in the third game of the week because, you know, they're 0-2 going 0-3 because their quarterback's dog water. I would love to see some Shea Patterson specific stuff. A la Chris Streveler, but maybe a little more, you know, on the pass, because I don't see Shea Patterson running into somebody and dropping his shoulder and leveling them.
No,
that's just
I mean,
not
many guys can do that. So
no, especially not many quarterbacks, right?
That's what I mean. Yeah, not many quarterbacks can do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
One little point of discussion that sort of came out of this game as well was the fact that there was only 24,875 there. At least that's how many tickets were distributed.
Yeah.
Which looked about right based on sort of from the press box. You don't really get a good view of the west side all that much, but based on sort of what I saw in the end zones and the east side, I was like, I guess probably 24, 25 was about the attendance. So that seemed to be a sticking point, which by CFL standards is a pretty good number. Around here, obviously the expectations are a little bit higher. And as you know, the discussion comes out, there was the usual sort of stuff. It was like, oh, it's, a Sunday night and anyone outside of sort of the Moose Jaw radius isn't really going to want to travel in. And the weather was kind of iffy and it's, this and that. They're playing an Eastern team, blah, 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 blah. All of which I'm sure accounts for some people. I'm not dismissing that as nothing. They are all something to some people, no question about it. I think ultimately, though, the fan base and the province is very much in a wait-and-see mode with this team still, which is fair. They've gone through 2 years of not winning a game after Labor Day. This is not a how you start league or even definitely not a how you start season for this team. It's how you finish. So even though they're 3-0 and the buzz is building and money's a little tight, so I don't really know if anyone's necessarily going to start throwing down money to see this team until they truly believe that what happened the last 2 years won't happen again. Sorry, beating Hamilton twice and Edmonton once isn't necessarily the barometer of that. So, yeah, if it was 100% pure optimism, I believe it probably would have eked closer to Thursday, even on 30, even on a Sunday night.
No, I would agree with all that. People have been burned by this team, and I think too. Yeah. I think the team's ticket initiatives about youth tickets and family packs and all that stuff that they released after the season had essentially started, right? Like before the home opener, but before the season had started. That to me, at least from talking to the inner workings of some people, mostly in, the Saskatoon Entertainment Group, that kind of stuff takes a few weeks to develop, right? You, as a dude with a family with 3 kids, you don't spontaneously decide to go to a Rider game tomorrow.
No.
You plan it out, you figure it out, you get everything packed, you go from there, right? So even with the announcement of, hey, you've got cheap youth tickets now, okay, great. Then you start looking at your schedule going, okay, am I going to take the kids to this game or that game, down the line? So I like the direction they're heading, and I get it. You start Sunday against an Eastern opponent, somebody you just played last week. Your next game is Thursday again against an Eastern opponent. Another hard night for people in Saskatchewan. So I'm not hitting the panic button until I see the attendance for actually the weekend of the Statneck Invitational, where, I'll be there Saturday morning against Winnipeg. That is a Friday night game. That's a 7:30 start. That's about a month after you mentioned, you announced your youth tickets being half price. That, to me, is the barometer. If that game is in the 20s, low 20s, I think there is reason to worry if you are the Riders ticket executives. We've said it here. Your theme nights aren't bringing a soul in.
No.
Like, you can sit there and you can be mad that people only showed up for 50 cent and then left, but people still showed up for 50 cent, right? There's not a soul that goes, yeah, it's green and white game. I got to go. I got to be there. Right? There's no added incentive. And we are now in the era of you need that added incentive. You either need to be a complete wagon where you're blowing the doors off everybody, a Grey Cup contender, because this is a province that only shows up when you're winning. And I can't blame people, right? I'm not sitting here going, I'm not support them through the good and bad. Like, I think you should believe in your team through the good and bad. Are you going to financially support them if they're not winning football games, if they haven't won a game after Labor Day in 2 years? Absolutely not. I don't blame you at all for doing that. Sit on your couch, watch it at home, listen to Dave Thomas, take it in that way, right? So people want to be there if there's something to draw them there, whether that's winning, whether that's event. And although the team's 3-0 now, they haven't shown enough. If they're 4-1, 5-0, when all of a sudden you got a game against the Bombers on a Friday night at 7:30 of a July weekend.
And the Bombers are 0 and whatever, and it could be a 84-0 win. Yeah, people might show up.
Exactly. You have an opportunity here to go Death Star mode on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, a team that has fed you your lunch and broken your hearts and dreams over and over again, minus a Labor Day win where Jake Dolegala decided to be the ghost of Tom Brady for one single night, right? So I don't blame anybody, but if I'm selling tickets for the Riders and they're not well over 20,000 for that Friday game against Winnipeg, that is when you hit the panic button. But again, I think it all goes back to what we have been saying now for 2 years. You know, you can get away with shitty theme nights if you're Winnipeg. Like, Winnipeg's theme nights objectively are the absolute worst in the league. Bar done, they are by far the worst. And we talked about that, right? But they've been winning, so people are going, right? 0-3 now. Now I'm going to be curious what happens, right? So Saskatchewan, they're winning now, haven't won lately. You need to start getting those bums in seats and do something for that. That's not bringing in the corpse of Kim Mitchell to perform for guys my dad's age.
Mm-hmm. One last thing before we go.
Yes.
This week is, of course, the Canada Day weekend. 4 games this year for the CFL, which is an improvement upon the 3 from last year.
Baby steps, Gas.
Baby steps. Canada Day is on Monday, but there is no game in the CFL that day. Which I can't quite wrap my head around. I know it's not a super traditional day for them, but it's not that big of a reach either. Like, they play Thanksgiving, I think, and they obviously play Labor Day, so it's not unusual to play on a holiday Monday.
Right.
And Canada Day is one of those days where people generally like to get out and do stuff. And it's not necessarily always just going to see the fireworks, but I mean, like, Jays games do well. Like, they are dog shit this year, and that place will still be packed and loud, and people will have a ton of fun on Canada Day because it's what they've built, it's what they do.
Well,
so I don't understand.
Even if you're going out for fireworks, especially here in Saskatchewan, it's not dark till 10 o'clock still.
Yeah. Or if you're like me and used to live in Grand Prairie, Alberta, they actually did the fireworks at midnight on July 1st because the 31st, because it would be, you know, technically the 2nd by the time we did the fireworks on actual Canada Day.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. So you're waiting all day, and especially, like, why not put a game on somewhere? This is an opportunity I think the league is missing. I'm not saying that has to be every Canada Day because I don't think you put a CFL game on a Tuesday or Wednesday. There's no reason for that.
Agreed.
But if it's any day between Thursday and Monday, there should be CFL games on. If it's Saturday or Sunday, there should probably be 2 CFL games on as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
But this is an opportunity for someone to make this their thing. I don't know who it is. I think maybe Ottawa's a little too on the nose. But it's an opportunity for someone make this their thing, because there was a few years ago the CFL did not schedule a Thanksgiving Day game in Montreal.
Yes.
And Montreal has done these forever. I remember going there once when covering the Riders on Thanksgiving Monday, and it was a blast, even though the Owls weren't that good then. And people in Montreal were upset about this. And I don't know if the league didn't know that this was that big of a... I didn't know that this was actually that big of a deal in Montreal until I heard this. Like, I just thought it was a thing that the league kept doing, and just because. Right. And apparently it turned into a tradition in Montreal that a number of people would go watch the Alouettes on Thanksgiving Monday. You know, it's like the Lions on Thanksgiving Day in the States. So why isn't this a thing somewhere? BC, Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg, somewhere, give them the opportunity to make this a game for them that becomes an event for people to go to.
Well, and it's so dumb.
Instead of it's supposed to be our national holiday, and a thing called the Canadian Football League is not even playing a damn game.
Well, they're worried that people are going to, you know, sit on their couches and watch TSN's wall-to-wall free agency coverage for the NHL. Like, come on, give your head a shake. And maybe that's it. Maybe it's a TSN thing.
Maybe.
Now that we talk about it, I didn't think about this during the preamble, but because if you're a team, you probably don't want to play where you're running into festivity. So you're probably not going to want a night game. If you're going to play in Canada,
I think it should be an afternoon game. I think, you know, people will obviously, there's reasons to put in Ottawa. I think there's enough going in Ottawa that you don't need to do it there. You obviously don't do it in Toronto because the Jays have that on lockdown.
Yes.
So put it somewhere out west. Give a Western team this game. Yeah.
Which would also allow you, if you were TSN, to move a little bit away from the noon free agent frenzy that...
Oh, yeah. Put that... You know, that game could be a 5 Eastern start, so that's like 3 o'clock here. That's fine.
Well, and let's face it, the NHL's free agent frenzy is like watching your favorite film on the hub, right? You're tuning in for 2 or 3 minutes, You're going through your vinegar strokes, and boom, it's done. Every signing is announced because these guys all have contracts in the top drawers.